know that I'm blessed. It's a few L's and millions, so turn that loss to a check.
Debbie Ward, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. For those of you that, good to see you too. Yeah. For those of you that don't know Debbie Ward, Debbie has been in the real estate business as an agent for 14 years now. She is the celebrity and superstar of House Hunters, right? An episode or two. And, you know, we got to know each other a while ago. She was the listing agent on a transaction probably 7 or 8 years ago. And I'll never forget, I was having lunch in Union Station, and I remember I'm like, who's that blonde girl with the red Porsche? And as I get closer, it's fucking Debbie Ward. And we've had a great, yeah, I know. We've had a great relationship, a great friendship, and
more deals now.
Yeah. So it's good. But for those that really don't know who you are, who's Debbie Ward?
In a nutshell, I am a Colorado native. So born and raised in Denver, went to CSU for undergrad in social work. Then I went to the Broadmoor Hotel for 9 years and worked there. Then I came back, went to DU, got my master's in business and finance, and then worked in the financial services industry for a while, and then moved into real estate about 14 years ago.
So you were with the Broadmoor for how long?
About 9 years, 9.5.
Where did you grow up?
In Denver.
In Denver. So you grew up here. You went to school for finance?
CSU, I went to social work.
Okay.
And I got a master's in business and finance.
So you're smart.
Yeah, let's just go with that. I guess I laugh all the time with real estate because I'm like, I think sometimes I use my social work degree a little bit more than I use my business degree as you work with people that you know, help them buy and sell houses. It's an emotional time.
It's the same thing in lending. You know, I think a lot of young people trying to get into the industry, there's sort of this belief that it's about, you know, math, right? And so it's like they're proud of themselves when they have the ability to tell me they went to school for finance or economics. And I'm like, man, that sounds exciting. Sounds like you're a lot smarter than me, but really it comes down to being good with people. Right. And sales.
It's a people thing. You tell people that. I'm like, it's a people business. I mean, think about it. Most people, this will be like the biggest financial investment they'll ever make. And it's important.
Yeah. When you went to work for the Broadmoor, how did that come about? Because it's just such a special place. They have such a high level of expectation for the people that work there and the experience that they create for people.
Well, I've been going to the Broadmoor since I was 4. It's my family. My dad was in the trucking business and everything, but the people who built the Broadmoor, Mr. and Mrs. Penrose, left all their money to a foundation because they didn't have any kids called the Alchemist Foundation. So Alchemist Foundation and the Broadmoor are very connected, and my dad was on the board for them. And so right after undergrad, went down and interviewed with the Broadmoor and got a job with that. Started at the front desk, managed a bunch of restaurants, got into sales. And yeah, it's fun, but that's also a people business.
Did they have a training sort of program that they put you through? And like, what are some of the things you remember from that? Because even though it wasn't like you're not selling a specific service or product, you really are selling yourself and the hotel, right? There's a 5-star resort.
Yes, it's 5-star, 5 diamond, one of just a few, and they've always had it every year. So yes, you do a lot of training. And then, you know, you listen to your coworkers and how they're talking. And, you know, yes, absolutely be happy to do that. And one of the things I found really important there is when I wrote, you know, if you are presented a problem, let's say that, you know, someone comes to me and they're like, we're having this problem. And I have to call you because you're the one who fixed it. Doesn't matter. It's still my problem. And I follow up and make sure so that, like, you know, when you are given that, you can't just pass it on. And I think, you know, clients like that. You follow up, you know, our guest there, be like, was it taken care of? How can I help?
That's interesting you say that, because come to think of it, I've stayed at certain places where that was the way that they addressed it. So like, it may be somebody else that gets involved to help with the situation, but then ultimately the person that I shared the concern with is the one following up with me. And there's just sort of a warm and fuzzy that it leaves you with, right? Like, wow, these they actually care. And they went and found the person that could solve the problem, but they cared enough to follow up with me and just didn't forget about me.
And then you make sure that the problem is solved, that nobody dropped the ball along the way. But yeah, I love the Broadmoor.
I'm curious, what sort of like liberty do you have? Like if there's somebody that's really complaining about something where it's like they escalate it to they try to get a free room or free dinner, like what sort of is there a protocol for that or
At the hotel?
Yeah, like who made the decision if they were going to comp something to comp something, and how was that determined?
I think when you get a little bit higher up, you just have that ability to do that. So
Like an intuition about
yeah, if you
what
start
needs
at
to
the
be
front
done.
desk, and if it's like comping a room, it may be different than being like, we'll buy you a drink.
Sure.
But most of the things is, especially when I managed a restaurant, they gave me one of theirs and I opened it. I don't know why they would give that to a 24-year-old, but they did. But basically, like, don't let anyone walk out that door unhappy. So, comp lunch, comp drinks, just figure it out. You just want people to be happy.
Yeah, very cool. So was it your time at the Broadmoor that, like, was there something about that made you start thinking about, like, hey, what else do I want to do? What does life after the Broadmoor look like? And, how did you become interested in real estate?
Well, if the Broadmoor was here in Denver, I'd still be at the Broadmoor.
You'd still be at the Broadmoor. You still go to the Broadmoor, from my understanding. Right?
I'm going there all the time.
Yeah, it's
Matter of fact,
fantastic.
I'm going there for Memorial Day weekend. I
you
feel
really?
like it's my second home.
Yeah,
I love that place.
It's such a great spot.
Because there's a lot of people that still work there from when I did in the 90s.
Oh, is that right?
Crazy?
Yeah. You know what I thought was really cool when we stayed? We stayed at one of the, like, I don't know what they call it, but it was like the dual room, like lake suites or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
do you know what I'm talking about? Looked over the lake to the west, like towards the mountains that way. And I just remember, and that was the first experience we had there. I don't think we knew we were getting a room that was that awesome, but we got in there. We're like, dude, this place is fucking amazing. Right?
It's so great.
But then it was my son at the time. He must have been, I don't know, he's like 1.5, and we thought he had an earache because he was just starting to like cry and scream. And we're like, oh my God, of course we come here to like relax and, our fucking kid's having an earache. And so we're like, what do we do? So we call, and my wife is probably a little paranoid and like overly concerned and wants everything, of course, which is understandable. But she calls like the concierge or something and says, I think we need to take my son to the emergency room or to the doctor's office to have this looked at, because if it is an earache, like, we don't want this to be 2 a.m. and he's freaking out and we have nowhere to go other than like the true ER, right? And so they arranged for a driver for us. A driver, obviously, that had to have a car, so they had to get a car seat into the car. And then there was, like, right outside of that room, like right next to it, I'm pretty sure there was like a staircase that went down and underground. And it like it was like a tunneled hallway that led under the property and came out behind like the reception desk or the lobby where you would check in. And I remember thinking to myself, like, dude, this is fucking awesome. Like, this, I felt like a celebrity, being like led underground to come out on stage or something.
So,
But it was just first class, and they drove us all the way there. The dude stayed with us there, the driver, while we were at the doctor's office. They said, no, he doesn't have an earache. So I'm like, fuck, what a waste of time. But the guy was there, and then we ended up going back, and just amazing.
So there's all these tunnels under the Broadmoor.
Is that right?
And there's a lot of them that go to houses like across the street. So yeah, I've roamed around down there, and
Is that right?
Yeah, it's fun.
So that was like a urban legend, I thought, but it's true.
Oh no, it's true.
Wow, there's tunnels. Love shit
I think
like
some
that.
of the houses that were across the way were brothels.
Oh, really?
And this is let's go
They
back
have
to
like statesmen and like
1918, whatnot, when it was built. Yeah, because people would stay there for months. So
Ah, wow, very cool. Okay.
But Anyways, I'd still be there, but in my 20s, I didn't want to live in Colorado Springs. So I was like, well, I'm going to go get my master's.
Okay.
Got it in finance and whatnot, and then got into financial services. And then my dad owned a trucking company and he'd sold it, but we owned all of this property. And so,
Like a semi-truck type
yeah.
company?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, but he sold the building, so we had that. Plus, we had like an Arby's and Good Times and other things. So
You guys owned those franchises?
we
or
owned
businesses?
the land, and they
Oh,
had it on
interesting.
there. We owned
Where?
the building,
In Colorado?
yeah, in Commerce City.
Oh, in Commerce City.
And
Wow.
so we owned the building and stuff for the trucking company. So it's industrial and commercial. So, anyways, I took over management of that
Uh-huh.
and found that it wasn't taking enough of my time. I like to work. I mean, it's a good thing to do. So that's how I got into real estate, because I could do both.
Huh.
And you have that flexibility.
Wow. So what was it like growing up with a dad that had a trucking company, and what's the story? Like, how did he just like buy a truck and that's how it started, or?
No, his dad started it. He was
Okay.
raised in Pueblo, and so
Okay.
he started it. And they had a bunch of trucks. It was petroleum and whatnot. So they opened a Denver office, and my dad managed that here in
Uh-huh.
Commerce City. Then we had one in Pueblo.
Huh.
And there came a time, like in the 80s, he's like, well, we either need to grow bigger or maybe sell it, because they were in that in-between spot. My brother and I both didn't have a lot of interest in running it. So
So he sold it.
he did.
Wow. When did he sell
But he
it?
kept the building.
Okay.
Um,
He sold the business, but he kept the real estate?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I would say that was in maybe 1987, 88. And then he was going to retire, but he was young. So he went to work for Jerry McMorris at NW. And they were best friends. And he helped Jerry start the Rockies, which is why I've been there every opening day since they started. And we
Oh,
have
I
great
see.
tickets and all that. Yeah, because Jerry owned the team.
How cool is that? So what was that like for you growing up as a kid to have a parent that was part of this? It sounds like a fairly big operation. I mean, he's driving petroleum. Was that the only thing he was driving? Okay. So he's driving petroleum. He owns real estate. He then gets into other businesses. What was that like?
I think I started working for my dad when I was 14 or 15 over the summer. It's such a ridiculous story. It'll tell you what teenage people think. But he's like, you should work for me this summer. I'm like, you know what? That's great. I'm going to get a corner office. I'm going to be like a senior VP. I'm going to be running things over there. But I'm like, this is good. This is great. So first day we get there, my dad's like, where's some of maybe your old jeans and old t-shirt? I was like, I'm sorry, what? And so we go to work, and there was a driver's room so that they would come into when they were filling up on petroleum, kind of could sit there and, grab some candy or whatnot. And it's dirty. It's Commerce City. So my dad's like, I think we're going to have you wash the walls. And I'm not kidding. I remember this mom that just like dirty water falling all over me, 14.
Okay.
I'm like, oh my God. And then I had to wash some windows and then other stuff. So finally, after like the first week, my dad's like, if you'd like to come upstairs and, work for my assistant, maybe make copies or something, we could do that. I was like, yes, please. And it was a really good lesson for me to learn, to be like, you work your way up.
That's intentional? Or he was just
I know.
like, what can she do?
No, it was very intentional.
What do you think he was trying to teach you?
You know what? You don't just come in as senior VP. You need to work. You need to be respectful. You need to treat people well. And it was a good lesson to learn.
Yeah. You need to be humbled too, right? Like,
Especially at 14.
yeah. It's like, no, honey, you're not rich. Daddy's rich.
My parents used to say that. You're like, we have a lot of money. You have nothing.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah. But teaches the value of hard work, right? And also like being able to see something that has been created where there's, I'm assuming, but there's probably an element of like, man, like if I work hard, I can learn and I can do something too.
Yes. And I also think it was a lesson or something he was trying to communicate with all of his employees. Like, my daughter's not going to come in here and be a senior VP.
True.
She's starting at the bottom. and she'll work her way up, which I think had everyone be
People
really,
respect him now because
because it was what he
he's
showed
treating you
them.
the way he treats everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no favoritism. Did that piss you off?
Yeah, a
or-
little bit.
Yeah. Did you eventually work into that corner office and run the place, or what?
No, I didn't. But
Uh-huh.
in the summer, I get more and more things I got to do, and
Yeah.
it was fun. But
What was the hardest part about being a daughter to an entrepreneur that was running a business? Because I'm sure there were some difficult times as well. Like, I always wonder, because I've always been an entrepreneur. So now that I have kids, I'm kind of like, wow, they're going to grow up with the optic of a dad that's busy, but I love my kids, right? Like, I'll do anything for them. I want to spend as much time as I can with them, but there's also like, I can't just sit around with them all day long. Right. And so so I've always been curious, like the difference between somebody that grows up with parents that are entrepreneurs or that run a business versus, maybe grows up with parents that have W-2 jobs.
my dad worked a lot, I remember that. Did that, but he did a lot for our family too. But I was also very lucky that my mom was a stay-at-home mom until later when, in high school that worked. But, I tell his story and watching him grow the business and, good things that happened, maybe some challenges that happened and how we solved that, how we worked through those things.
Did you ever feel like dad's not around enough?
I don't remember feeling that. Looking back on it, I'm like, yeah, I don't think he was around very much, but I didn't feel it at the time. He worked hard, and we, one of the nice things, we had a pool. My dad had, built a pool, had a pool put in. And so our family spent a lot of time in that pool playing games or doing fun stuff that my dad was always involved in. And that was really fun to have that time. And
That's cool. Did you notice any arguments between mom and dad because he wasn't around as much as maybe she would have liked? Or was that sort of the understanding that they had? Or do you remember?
oh, I remember very clearly, but they never argued in front of us. I mean,
Okay.
never, not a single
Was that a
word.
rule that they had?
I think they should have. Like
Uh-huh.
later, I'm like, I think they should have, because when I started dating, getting in an argument, I'd be like, oh, you're not the one.
Interesting.
So I think they
Interesting.
should have had some arguments or disagreements so that you
Uh-huh.
could see that. I mean, my parents have been married now 58 years
Mhm.
and they're still together and
Hmm.
they're so in love. So it
That's
would have
amazing.
been, I think, good to see that
Mhm.
because then you know that you can work through those
You
things.
can work through it. Exactly. Yeah. I think that there's there's almost like a skill to arguing, right? Like you have to be able to stand your ground and make your point if you believe in it. But I think the fear with, maybe mom and dad fighting and the kids seeing it is that at some point you forget how to argue and it becomes emotional and you disrespect each other and you start calling each other names. That's where I think
Yeah.
it can go sideways. But I would agree with you. I think that seeing like a healthy disagreement and an argument, even if it does get intense, but then being able to close the loop on that and work through it and then show the lesson. I don't know. That's what we kind of try to do. I know it's surprising that we argue. I mean, you'd probably think we never argue, but
I would never think. I don't think you should.
we're not human beings.
You should never argue solely,
we're
but
machines.
I don't know. I think I think it's very healthy,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're like, let's do this and that, and have disagreements, and as long as it, like you said, it's a healthy argument. But they just didn't. So
Yeah, that's cool.
yeah,
That's awesome. Okay, so they sold the business, and then when was it that you started to get involved in real estate?
about 14 years ago, I'm working at this financial company that I won't name, but
Did you hate it?
yeah, I hated it.
Really?
I was working at Fiserv for a while. It was great.
Okay.
And then TD Ameritrade bought them. So I went to this other company and another financial institution of product management. They were rude to employees. They fought all the time. And there started things go a little sideways with trying to kind of sneak in some fees here and there that's illegal.
Do you think that's normal with financial services companies?
No, I don't. I think
was
there's
just
a lot of
specific to that.
ego in this. So I left. And a few years later, they got fined like $50 million and shut down
Holy
and the
cow.
whole thing. And I was sitting there, I'm like, you can't be doing what you're trying to do. So that's when I started managing.
Was
the
it a
family
publicly
business.
traded company? Can you say that?
Yes, it was.
It was publicly traded. So when you say ego and trying to sneak in fees, was it like they were trying to make shareholders happy and like jack up the stock price
I
by?
think they're just trying to make more money.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the deal. If you own a stock
Uh-huh.
or a mutual fund, whatever you're doing, and you manage it, you can charge whatever you want. You could charge 50% as fees, but you absolutely have to disclose it. And you also
Sure.
have to disclose it in your returns.
There's no regulation on what you charge.
No, but you have
As
to
long as you
show
disclose it.
You have to
You have
disclose
to
it.
But those damn prospectuses are so confusing, dude.
know.
Like, who the fuck knows how to read one of those?
Nobody,
things?
but
And
that's-
whoever does.
But that's half
that's
the
the point.
problem. But
Yeah,
let's just say you're looking at performance, right?
Mhm.
And you're like, okay, the stock was $10, but now it's $5 because they're taking all these fees. You'll see it,
Mhm.
and that's where the rub came in. And they were doing it. Found out later they were doing it with some where they had to return some money, and there was,
Jeez.
But I'm just sitting there. I'm like, I don't want to be part of it.
God, there's so many like sophisticated financial scams out there, right? Like, did you watch the Bernie Madoff story? I mean, how crazy. This guy was so respected from like the top people in the world, like on the planet. Everybody respected this dude. And he had the world's biggest fucking Ponzi scheme going ever. Like, I would have loved
the other.
I would have loved to have been somehow like involved in that to see it, just because it was sheer sorcery. You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
this guy
they
had
lie.
everybody.
But
And
everyone who invested, I will tell you this. So every year he's doing like 20-25% returns.
right,
And
right.
there were so many smart people that invested with him and did
Mm-hmm.
that. I'm like, if it's too good to be true, maybe it is. But
It is. But people don't give a shit when they're making 20. Like when you're making 25% returns, and especially if you've got a ton of dough, like look, if you invest 10 grand and you make 25% returns, that's great. But some of these guys, they're investing 50, $100 million. That's a ton of cash.
yeah, but then people want out. You just paying these people with this thing.
Yeah.
It was a numbers and a prospectus game. I mean, the reporting
yeah.
was just
It
fraudulent.
was all bullshit, dude. It's
Still
crazy.
bullshit.
He was making up the returns.
You have to wonder, though. This is what I always think about him. I wonder if he woke up every day being like, I wonder if this is the day I'm going to get caught.
Dude, I think like when you become this individual and you realize, because one day you realize like the gravity of the situation, he had to, right? He just is like, holy fuck, dude, I'm at the top of this like multi-billion-dollar scam. I would imagine it's so difficult at that point to unravel. Because like, listen, okay, so you commit fraud on people at 10 million, and it's like, well, shit, if I tell people now, they're going to bust me. And so you kind of keep going, thinking to yourself, maybe there's going to be a better time to do it. But then all of a sudden it's at 100 million, then it's 500 million, then it's $1 billion. Then you're like, I'm the fucking guy that everybody looks to generate all this wealth. And so you begin to start almost convincing yourself that what you're doing is altruistic and that it's actually helping people. And so you kind of forget about the bullshit and the fraud that you're committing.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure you knew exactly. But think about it. Think if you were doing something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Every morning you woke up, kiss your wife and your kids goodbye. Like,
Yeah.
I wonder if this is I wonder if this is the last time.
I can't remember. Do you think they knew about it? I can't remember if they knew. I think they
I think
didn't.
one of the sons,
kept it.
helped
The
with it.
son.
I think. I can't remember,
I
but
feel like he kept trying to hide it from, or not hide it, but like would keep them out of it on purpose.
he might have.
Which goes to show that he did know exactly what he was doing, because he didn't want them to be arrested, and he knew that he was going down at some point.
Yeah,
Crazy,
but
dude.
big houses, nice cars, helicopters, private jets, to jail.
I know. What's amazing to me is there's so many legal ways to do it, right? But like the life of a criminal, I think it's just some sort of it's a power trip. It's such an ego trip, right? Because there's an element of like, I'm getting away with it, and there's like a secret. And
Well, but he was
something-
making a ton of money. I
Yeah.
mean, and that's enticing too.
True.
But it's just fraudulent. He just lied.
Yeah. Anyway, fucking Bernie Madoff. I'm sure there's gonna look at Sam Bankman-Fried. Look what this guy did. I mean, very similar but different. But he had everybody fooled too. And it's just there's gonna be, I think, more of these types, just because it's like we're in the greatest time in the history of our planet ever to make money, especially, right? Like the first trillionaire is going to be born here soon, and it's just so much easier with the internet and crypto. It's like there's just going to be more and more people out there that are doing this, unfortunately.
Well, the thing that I think is extremely scary about that is, I think you and I see that, know that, and a lot of people do, but older people don't. And during COVID, one of my friend's mom got scammed out of like $780,000.
Oh my goodness.
And so
dude.
her retirement is going to be totally different now, and they'll never get it back.
How did she get scammed? Do you know the story?
Yeah, so she met somebody online. She didn't know who that person was, but at the
Like
same
online
time,
dating? What do you mean?
yeah, kind of online dating.
Okay.
And it's COVID. Everyone's like in the house. So
yeah.
they're talking all the time. But the guy called and said, this is a publisher's clearing warehouse. Remember where you get the big check?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, and you've won. But we need you to sign this confidentiality agreement
Oh
because we
my
can't have you
God.
talk about it. And then it's like, well, we need you to pay the taxes up front so that we can give you this $10 million or whatever it is. And then it was like, well, now we need kind of this. So she was buying like gaming cards where they could do it in cash. She was taking cash out of her credit cards.
Oh my God.
All this stuff. And her credit card's like, well, you took the cash. We can't cover it.
Yeah.
And so, and at the same time, this guy she supposedly is dating is like, oh, I'm sure it's fine. It's great. So I don't know if they were in cahoots and all of that, but
Holy cow.
the FBI got involved, all of it. She'll
I
never
mean-
see another penny.
Listen, and for any of you that thinks for a second that you couldn't be that person, we all could be that person. We all have the ability to be manipulated and because we want to believe in something, right? And like, I'm sure they put on a front that was super legit. It's easy to look at the story and say, what an idiot. How did she not, but no, when you're in it, it's a totally different experience, right? You're kind of prone to wanting to believe the situation because you're experiencing it.
Well, you think about it like, oh, how great is my life going to be when I get $10-15 million?
Yeah.
And they just kind of dangle it,
You're just doing little things, and
people that
eventually.
call and they're like, we're the IRS.
But $780,000. She's not pulling cash from credit cards to give them that. That's like somebody took it. Like eventually they let her to like give us your wiring information or wire funds. Or
I don't
something.
know how all of it ended up, but it was a ton of money.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, so anyway, you were in financial services. We're trying to get to real estate. I keep
Oh, good. So
interrupting and talking about Ponzi schemes.
Yeah, so no, I managed that. Then I got my real estate license. Started at Porchlight, went to a couple.
Did you have a
others.
friend in the business, or like what made you think real estate?
Well, I really like real estate. I love property management. I like dealing with that. And I also was like, well, I need to continue this family business. So I'm also going to have a job that's not 8 to 5 because things happen. And talked to some other realtors to that. I'm like, I think this would be a good move. And it has been.
Yeah. What was your first year like?
Um, it, uh, it's tough. I think your first year, and I always tell new agents, be like, you need to have enough money in the bank to maybe survive that
Mm-hmm.
because it's hard to get traction.
Mm-hmm.
And open houses are great to do it. You almost have to do it with strangers because your friends and family know you're new, but you need to start with a really good firm that's going to help you and support you. And
What do you think makes it so difficult your first year?
um, I think getting clients.
Mm-hmm. Is that because like you don't know how to prospect yet, or you're just so drinking from a fire hose with learning contracts and all these classes they throw at you? Like,
Yeah, probably a little bit of both.
mm-hmm.
And I got a lot of clients from open houses. People come in. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, you have to learn a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and you know,
When did you really start to get traction in your own business?
probably like year two,
Or two?
year two or
And
three.
was that, like, what changed?
Um, well, I think once you start in the business and you're getting clients and you keep in touch with them,
Mm-hmm.
then they refer you, and then those referrers refer other people. You open houses, but the more people you can help buy or sell real estate, and the better you do, they start referring you,
Mm-hmm.
and that's good.
Mm-hmm. What do you like? It seems like over the last few years, there have been so many people that have got into real estate. Or it's almost like everybody you meet is a realtor or a lender, right?
I
And
know.
but unfortunately, I would say, Denver doesn't need another lender or realtor, but could always use another great one. And so, for all of those agents and lenders that have gotten into the business, how do you stay relevant, and how do you separate yourself from the crowd?
Um, they keep tabs on the market and what it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wish the bar was a lot higher to get into both of our professions.
Mm-hmm.
But rather than that, keep in touch with my clients,
Mm-hmm.
do a lot of those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
And, once you've been in the business for a while, like you're very good at what you do. I
Thank
think
you.
I'm very good at what I do as well. So taking new buyers, those kind of things, is good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I get a lot of calls like, I got this weird agent that didn't know what they're doing. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
sorry.
Like, what's the most difficult part of the process for you? If you think about, like, the very, very beginning is maybe like your routine to like prospecting, to then showing homes, to writing offers and getting people under contract, then managing that process to closing, post closing. Like, when you think about, it's such a multifaceted industry and there's so much you have to do, right? It's like, I think a lot of people think it's just like, oh, I'm going to show homes and make a lot of money. And it's like, that's probably like 1/100th of a % of what you're actually doing throughout the process. What has been the most challenging part of the process for you?
Uh, it, it, it depends on the people, I think. Some things go really smoothly. Other times, it's really, sometimes the negotiation on both parties
Mm-hmm.
can be the most difficult, you know.
Mm-hmm. Just like tensions getting high and emotions and
And people just, you know, like I'm on the buy side of this one deal. And there's a hot water heater there from like 1987. I'm not kidding.
mm-hmm.
So we're like, well, we want a new hot water heater. He's
Uh-huh.
like, well, I'm not going to give you one because it works. We're like, I know, but it's from 1987. He's like, but it works. It's $1,500, and
Mm-hmm.
this is like a $900,000 house. And I'm not kidding.
Uh-huh.
My buyer was like, well, I am not doing it. I mean, and
Wow.
so they're
Just drew a line in the sand over 50.
oh,
Yeah.
and so is the seller. They're like,
Uh-huh.
nope, no. So
But hey, does that put pressure then on the agents to like, well, fuck, really? We're gonna let this thing die over $1,500? Or do you guys talk as professionals and say, look, we'll each throw in 750? Or, how do you
I've
navigate
done
that?
that before.
Mm-hmm.
What I did in this particular case is I was like, well, Do you think your seller would split the cost? She's like, yeah, let me get him to do that, or I will. But my buyer had found this electrician. He's like, oh, he's so nice, but we got prices for what needed to be done. It was the most expensive thing I've ever seen. So I called the electrician. I'm like, hey, can you break all of this down for us so we can see what the costs are? Because I'm thinking that this might be about $750 higher than it should be.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, I'll take $750 off.
The electrician said that. Oh my God.
So sometimes you just need to think outside the box. I mean,
Sure.
at the end of the day, I would have paid the $750. I mean,
Sure.
but but it's things like that you're like, really? We're fighting over 1,500.
I think the one thing that I've come to realize, and I think it must be this in every business. Well, I guess two pieces, right? It's like, if you're not prospecting, or if you don't have people to prospect for you, eventually the well runs dry, right? And it's so like, I think it keeps me up at night, because it's like, how do I get better at prospecting? How do I continue to grow that? Because it's really not, I mean, there's a lot of bad people in any industry, but there are good ones too. You're a great one, right? And so you're great at what you do, but if nobody knows about you, it doesn't matter how fucking good you are, you're not going to be able to help anybody. So how do you continue to prospect day after day? And now the world's changing, right? Because and I've said this before, but I feel like the future of our industry is going to be fundamentals. It's going to be belly to belly. It's going to be face to face, phone calls, all the shit that we've been doing for years. But the future is also going to include data, automation, and content, whether we like it or not. And so it's like, how do you create a marketing arm or marketing machine where you're casting a super wide net and people know who you are, so that there are more than enough leads coming in? And then once they're in, you have to be good at sales to convert them and show value. And here's why I'm different than all the other agents or lenders out there. But
that's a struggle for me right at this particular moment. I'm in a BNI, the marketing and prospecting.
Yeah.
So BNI, we're growing a group again. That's where most of my business comes from. But because you're meeting people face to face, they get to know you, and they can refer you, and they want to use you, and all of those kind of stuff for business. I struggle with social media a lot. It's like, you need to get on it. You need to do things like this, and
I think a lot of people struggle with it.
That's, I think, everyone's biggest struggle.
When you say you struggle with it, though, like what is it specifically you struggle with? Is it fear of attention? Is it not knowing what to say? Is it not believing it'll work?
I think some of it might be, I don't know what to say. You need to come up with a plan, or figure out the YouTube thing. And I'm like, well, maybe I should paint this wall because this is where I'll be speaking. I mean, I think you just need to jump in and do that. With Facebook and Instagram, I struggle with posting because I just don't do it. And there's nothing I'm afraid about it.
Yeah. Well, not knowing what to say is a big part of it. Yeah. Right? I mean, that's a big part of why people don't make their calls each day. Because eventually it feels like you've sort of said everything you need to say. Like, what else am I going to say to you as an agent or a past client? And so, like, we talk about it on our team all the time. It's once a week, we come up with a go-to conversation. And then the whole team, including myself, I'm not thinking about 1,000 different topics and underwriting guidelines and new product announcements and what's happening in the market. It's one focus, and that's it. And it makes it simple. And that's the only thing I'm talking about that week. Hey, Debbie, just wanted to reach out. I'm doing a class on Thursday. This is what it's about. And that's all I'm talking about. But next week it might be, hey, I wanted to touch base and let you know about a new product we just launched.
And I think that's what I need to do, and have that, maybe put on YouTube. And
yeah. Well, I think it's the same thing with with content. But, if you really think about it, ego protects us from shame and embarrassment, right? So really, when you think about it, see, I always used to think of it the opposite. I used to look at the people on social going, dude, look at this guy flashing this or flashing that, or like they've got such a big ego. They're just attention whores. They just want all the, and when in reality, I was the one with the fucking ego, because I was the one that wasn't wanting to share because I was afraid of being embarrassed. My ego protects me from shame and embarrassment. So now I've sort of flipped it mentally to go, okay, now me sharing with people, if I can help somebody because of something I say, or you and I have in this podcast today, we can help somebody. Isn't that worth sharing?
Well, that's exactly it. And my team and I talk about that all the time. It's like, help people and share what works and what doesn't work. And I think that's a good idea. Like Monday, come up with something and then
that's it.
Just do it. Like either something that interests you or something that doesn't. I mean, I'm not embarrassed by it. I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, so I'm like, well, I mean, I was on the house hunters. If I could do that for like 40 hours, 10 minutes of this, I just do need to think of things to say, something that might be important or something maybe I'm going through that we could share, because I think, I don't know, I got through Instagram and it's like under contract, sold. It's just a whole scrolling thing where I'm like, do people really care about that?
This is where I think the huge opportunity is. I think there's such a massive opportunity because I think everybody knows like, oh, I should probably be posting something, right? There's this, but when you really look at everybody and what they're posting, nobody's doing it right. Everyone's just, there's not really a message underneath it all. It's just like, look at me and my buyer at the closing table. Now, documenting success is one part of it, but it's not the only thing.
Yeah, I understand that. I think there's a lot of people on my team, they're doing really good jobs of just education. Like, here's some good steps for you to do on Facebook. And, everyone on my team just shares everything. Like nobody has this mindset of, I'm not sharing my secrets or, they're just like, yeah, how can we help? What can we do?
If you really think about, and look, like you're going to start to see my content over the next year, and like a year from now, it'll be like, holy fuck, this guy's got a reality TV show. That's basically what you'll see. People don't want to just be educated 100% of the time, because then it's boring. Then it's like all this person's talking about is loan products. All this person's talking about is why they should purchase now. What's happening with the... No, dude. They want to see like the shit that you don't want to talk about because you're embarrassed to share it because, oh God, what are they going to think? That's exactly the shit you need to share, because that is what people can connect with and go, yeah, me too. Man, I'm glad she said it. That's what makes them want to tune in. And then they see the rest of your life and it's sexy, it's intriguing, it's unique, it's different.
I think everybody, wants to see someone that fucked up the same way they did.
Totally.
To be like, oh, good, I'm not the only one that fucked that thing up.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that's good too. It's to be like,
it's about getting honest with it, right? Like when you really think about the people that are sharing and they're not sharing that shit, they're fucking fake. They're just not.
Everything's, they're like,
right?
Look at my perfect family.
Yeah.
I'm like, I live with 2 terrorist dogs.
Yeah. Did you say terrorist?
I call them terrorists.
Terrorist dogs. I love dog shih tzus, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I think it's
ever.
like, telling people that you're talking about a new agent. So my parents, ended up buying a house that first year of mine and selling theirs. Say, let me be their agent. But this house isn't even built, okay? It's dirt. And talking to the salesperson and want to pretend like I know stuff. And I'm like, wow, we should probably do a radon test now so that we know if there's radon. There's no house. There's no basement. There's nothing. He was like, well, we put, radon mitigation in, stuff like that. Makes me just laugh. I'm like,
funny.
But that, a new agent should know that. Like, it's okay to make mistakes or say dumb things.
Hey, so where do you think this is all headed with real estate? I don't know if you've sensed it, but it just seems like it's a little different than it has been, right? And I just sense that something is like, I don't know. I'd be surprised to wake up 5 years from now and have this be the same.
Well, so we spent, some time talking about Madoff and all that kind of stuff. I think with this lawsuit with NAR and that MLS, it's kind of sent a message like, this industry, you're overpaying. You shouldn't do that. They're just taking money. I think there's been some bad messages out there, which I frankly I know aren't true, especially here in Colorado. I think a lot of people are like, well, I'll just do it myself. And that makes me nervous for them, not to have that. So I don't know. I think we're going to weed out some of that. I've already seen like buyers, agents, fees are dropping, what sellers will pay. I wouldn't be surprised if it changes where buyers need to pay their own agent.
Is it still being published on the MLS, like what they're paying, or is that stopped already?
No, it's still
going,
which is good. I think they're not going to change that. That I was like, it's just going to add a layer of,
confusion and more work.
Well, if you're my buyer and you're like, I want to see these houses, I'm like, great, but I don't know what they're paying, because you want to have that conversation and be like, well, we can look at this house, but someone needs to pay. So no, they haven't, but they put right under that the MLS doesn't have anything to do, with pricing. So I'm glad they kept that in there.
So you just think over time you're going to see buyers agents commissions decrease?
We're already seeing it a little bit. The hard thing is buyers will have a more difficult time paying their agent because they're already putting so much money out of pocket out. So if it switches to be like buyers pay their agent, sellers pay their agent, we're going to have to talk about that and figure out how that will work the best way. And I also will say, I don't know, maybe we'll just get back to normal in 6 months.
What do you think happens? Like, so is the conversation with the buyer right now, hey, I just need to let you know that it's possible you see a house that you're in love with, and I find out that the seller's not willing to pay a buyer agent commission. And if I find that out, I still need you to understand that this is my compensation, and in that event, you'd be responsible for paying me.
I've already said that from the beginning. We have a buyer's agency agreement, and we talk about it. And I'm very upfront. I'm like, most of the time the seller's going to pay me, but if they don't, you will have to. And every agent should be having that conversation with their buyer right when they, do the buyer agency agreement.
For sure. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This has been fun. Yeah,
it's always good to see you.
I know, it's always good to see you too, and we'd love to have you back sometime.
Yeah, that would be good.
Turn that loss to a check. Every time that I see a limit, I push right past it. Don't care if you got here first, the one to win is the last one standing. Say my life is like luck, nah.